Welcome all. Today I'd like to talk about audio as it applies now to my Pocket 4K, but what I'm going to talk about applies to any system, any camera, microphone system, audio recording system that you might have. But I thought I'd just cover a little bit of ground over what I've put together as a hopefully final solution to my audio woes that I've had since I started getting interested in video about 3 years ago, from when I started with very cheap and perhaps nasty little options to try to improve the audio quality with my Pocket 4K and other cameras, and without having to spend too much money. Some of those sort of worked and some of them didn't, but overall I didn't waste a lot of money at all, and in the process started to learn a lot about audio itself. And one of the things that I did fairly recently was improve the microphones on the cameras by getting some powered mics from Rode, the Video Mic Pro Plus and the Video Mic NTG that came out fairly recently, and they made a huge difference in my run and gun situations, which is what I basically do. And though the quality improved dramatically, it wasn't always ideal. One of the problems was that as a single operator, I don't have much opportunity to actually monitor the audio on the gear as I'm sort of roaming about and shooting, and when audio levels change dramatically, there's not much I can do about it, and sometimes I've lost the quality of audio, or the audio entirely as far as the usability point of view goes. And an example of that was a recent wedding ceremony that I covered, and I think the other videographer on the site there had the same problems, as neither of us used any of the spoken word that was being presented over the rather average loudspeaker system during the ceremony itself. So I decided that I really needed to do something about that, and as it happens, about 8 months ago 32-bit float audio recorders came out. And 32-bit float, for those who aren't aware of it, is a bit like shooting RAW with video or stills photography. It allows you to draw a lot more out of the audio than you would normally with a 24-bit type recording, where the limitations are fairly severe. With 32-bit float, you can do some amazing stuff. I'll put a link down below to Curtis Judd review on the Zoom F6, which I now have, and he explains exactly how it operates and what you can do with it. I'm not going to go into the details of that because I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to talking about the actual utilisation of audio and so forth. I'm still learning there, but what I now have is something that makes things a hell of a lot easier from the tests that I've done in the last couple of weeks. Now, there were two options available. One was the Sound Devices MixPre-3 version 2 that came out about the same time as the Zoom F6, and it too does the 32-bit float recording. It has some features that the Zoom F6 doesn't. The Zoom F6 has features that the MixPre doesn't, and according to Curtis, as far as the audio quality goes, it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other, so both are very good. The deciding factor for me for going for the Zoom was the price. At the time when I bought this, there was a $700 price difference. Now that's pretty substantial. Now in the US, I believe they're pretty close to each other in the price, but for some reason in Australia there's that huge gap between the two. So that was a no-brainer for me as far as that goes. Some of the features that the Sound Devices has built in don't really affect me. I don't need them, so I'm quite happy with what I've got. But when I received the Zoom F6, I was actually quite surprised, because there are features here that I'm glad made me get or I'm glad that the price difference was there, because the Zoom F6 suits me far better than I think that the MixPre would. Now, thing is, with the F6, it's like a little brick. You can put small batteries into it like that, and it's almost zero size. Ignore the little plate and the Rode wireless Go or receivers on there at the moment. I'll talk about them shortly. But one of the features that I found with the F6 that the MixPre doesn't have is, for one, there's 4 AA batteries inside, which will run the device, and it's got a built-in NPF battery adapter at the back that allows you to put any sort of NPF battery in there, and it'll run off that battery first, and if that goes flat, it'll automatically transfer to the internal batteries. So you've got basically an UPS in there, which the MixPre doesn't have. Every battery has to go to the back of the unit. It comes standard with a AA battery holder, and if you want to put MPF batteries, you've got to buy the separate unit for that, which is one thing that increased the price difference by up to $700, because it's about $150 to $200 for the MPF sled. And also the MPF sled holds the batteries in that position, so the advantage of having the slim design of the MixPre is almost lost immediately you put in the MPF batteries, because it actually holds the batteries both top and bottom, I think to give you that ability to hot swap, but it makes the unit itself significantly larger. In fact, it becomes larger than this unit because all the measurement specifications talk about the MixPre without a battery holder attached. The other thing with this is that if you want to get one of these little adapters, you can put that in there, and that's an MPF connector with a D-tap on the end. You can actually put it onto a camera unit, and you can run the unit directly off MPF or D-tap power. And with this little adapter I've got, you can even pull 7.4 volts out to run a monitor or something like that. So that to me is versatile. It's not to say you can't do that with the MixPre, but it means putting in adapter on top of adapter, and with what I've got, you don't have to worry about that particular aspect at all. The other thing I like about the F6 is that it doesn't have a touchscreen. When you've got a little minuscule touchscreen that's about the size of a postage stamp, I don't particularly believe that they're all that effective. It may work for some people, but I really have with my fingers, for some reason, I have a lot of trouble with touchscreens, and the smaller they go, I reckon the worse the experience will be. With this unit, it's got 4 buttons, a menu button, an OK button, and an up and down button to allow you to scroll through the menus, and it is super easy to use. I've got no problems with it at all. It's simple as anything, and it's very, very effective. So in my view, I prefer that simple aspect than having a touchscreen all over the place. Touchscreens are useful, but I don't believe that they're useful everywhere. So from that perspective, this is in my view, a top little unit. I've been really happy with the quality of sound and versatility, and the versatility side comes into it with my little wireless go units. Now anybody can use this with any sort of a recorder. I'm actually putting it into this, and I've got the receivers set on top of this little plate, which the plate was designed to attach your camera underneath. Had a little wheel on there, which I think was pretty flimsy actually. I wouldn't have trusted it all that much, but that was never my intent to attach this to the base of a camera. It was going to be held in a little case. So the unit's there. I've got, at the moment, in fact, I'm recording into my camera, one of my Pocket 4Ks with the Rode NTG mic, and it's attached through a Y splitter to the transmitter of one of the wireless goes, and also going into the camera, and it's transmitting into the unit itself as you see it. Now the good thing about that is I don't need timecode doing it this way, because the WAV files are linked in. When I put them into to DaVinci Resolve, I can just link them up straight away, and they're all aligned, so there's no need for timecode as far as that goes. The other interesting thing about this is that this records in 24-bit or 32-bit float. The camera records 24-bit, yet for some reason, and I think it's to do with the Rode Wireless Go units, it'll actually send a 32-bit signal. I'm not sure about that, but I've read some specs on other units, and they talk about only doing 48 kilohertz and 16-bit, and most of the better ones do 48 kilohertz 24-bit, but I can't find any specifications for the Wireless Go. But anyway, the files that come get sent to the unit itself are all 32-bit. I'll talk about how I know that shortly. The other thing is that this unit's got 6 inputs. I don't think I'll ever be using the 6 inputs, but they're there. The 3 inputs that I've got XLR adapters that go from there into the Rode receivers, and I've got a Rode XLR adapter that provides phantom power for a non-powered mics, also works with the lav and all the rest, so I can actually have this carried with me and have a lav connected to me while I'm doing other sort of recording, so I can talk into the thing as well as record. So that works quite well, and I've got a little output here with a double adapter for the line out if I wanted to use a wide connection or wireless even, because I can actually put the transmitters in there, replace those, the receivers, put them on the camera, and put the transmitter on here, and then line out sending to the cameras itself if I want to do 2 separate audio systems that way. the line out is very clean and clear. There's no issues whatsoever with that going into the camera. I have heard some people complain about it, but as far as my cameras go, not a problem at all. And I've also used it with my Olympus EM1, and it works perfectly with that as well. So that's another little handy thing. So you can actually do it two ways with the wireless Go units or any wireless transmitters, either transmitting from the camera or transmitting to the camera. So, and also there's a little final point. This unit's got these two little rails here which allow you to put on a table, but they're also a belt rail, so you can put a belt through there and put it onto your waist without having to worry about having a bag. But I consider a bag to be probably an important thing, and you can get special bags for all these audio recorders. There's a K-Tech bag that's made for it, but it won't take it with this gizmo attached to the top. It'll only take it flat, and that's not what I wanted. So I went searching and I found a little Lowepro camera bag. I'll put the details of what that is in case you're interested, and it goes in there, perfect fit, and I can move about with that over my shoulder, having it recording, and it'll record perfectly. I'm recording right now into the camera. I can close the bag up, and the signal will go through there quite fine. There's no worries about anything being blocked or distance or anything else when it's hanging over your shoulder and your camera's in your hand. So that's good, and that was only a third of the price of the K-Tech bag, so there's a bonus there already. So basically that's what I've got now, and I think I've sort of got my audio slowly sorted out. There's a lot I've got to learn about audio still, but without the right tools you're not really going to go anywhere, and this absolutely is a lifesaver in the way that it operates with the 32-bit float. So anyone that is actually considering getting a recorder and wants to be sort of, I guess in my case, idiot-proof, the 32-bit float recorder is really the way to go now. And the Zoom F6 is an excellent unit. No doubt the Sound Devices unit is also excellent. It just swings and roundabouts as far as the different form factor and so forth goes. So it depends on what you can get and what price, I think, nowadays, and depends how you want to use it. In my view, this sort of little brick format is so much better. The versatility that it enables me versus, I think, after looking at the Sound Devices unit in more detail, this is something that suits me a lot better. So it works quite well. I've got no complaints about it at all, and I'm sort of hoping once this lockdown is over, I'm going to start doing a few more events and really putting it to the test, and then being able to report back as to how well it works. So that's all I've got to show and tell at the moment. So I'll hopefully see you at some other time. I'm glad I checked the video before I packed everything up. I realised I hadn't spoken about one thing which I said I would, and that's using the audio files in DaVinci Resolve. Now, when I said that the Rode transmitter appears to transmit 32-bit files to the unit, the reason I think that is well, it is happening because when the files are put into to DaVinci Resolve and I look at the metadata, the camera files are 24-bit and these ones are 32-bit, and I can actually adjust and move the quality of it from something that is very low to quite reasonable sound. So the sound that you're hearing has been touched up with the 32-bit files because they come down as a fairly low signal, but they're able to be adjusted. Now, the other thing about the DaVinci is that I'm recording in 32-bit polyphonic wave files. So what it does is combines all of the three inputs into to one input. Now, I'm only recording onto one at the moment, but when I've been doing three inputs from two microphones and say a lav, and the files that get put into DaVinci Resolve, it automatically separates them so that you get each individual file that you're able to work on. Now, in Premiere Pro, for example, that won't do that. You have to use a program, for example, that Sound Devices provides, which is called, I think, Wave Agent, and that allows you to separate the files from a polyphonic sort, an individual file, into the individual audio files itself, left and right. But DaVinci Resolve does that automatically. So when you open them up, you'll get as many files as you've actually got. So you've got left and right, plus one each for the audio files itself. So I think that's pretty good. I didn't realise it would do that. I haven't really gone looking into seeing how it does it or anything like that, but it most certainly does. and that's another bonus I think of using DaVinci Resolve, that it's very, very versatile with not just the video files but the audio files as well. So I thought I'd add that because I did say I was going to talk about DaVinci. So that's something to also consider if you're a Resolve user. So it actually is a bonus with 32-bit files, and especially polyphonic WAV files. And I think the poly files are used because some organisations prefer them. It's a smaller file than having everything separated. Say if you're using 6 microphones and having 6 separate audio channels coming in left and right, so there's 12 altogether. This is just one single file that you can then separate and work on, but each to their own. For me, it seems to work fine, so that's the way I do it, and I don't have any problems. So to wrap it up, that's about it for this particular session, and hope to see you again. Cheers.